Hey friends, this is Rachel. There are so many people that are considering homeschooling right now because of the pandemic that I really felt impressed to share 5 homeschool keys that have opened doors of blessings for our family and might save you some of the angst that I went through when we were first getting started. Quick background, we're going into our 7th year of homeschool. Our oldest is in her 2nd year of school at Brigham Young University with some scholarships, so it's totally possible. And our youngest is 8 years old. You want to make sure you know the legal requirements for your state. Here in South Carolina, there are 3 options. The first requires that your kids participate in an annual statewide testing. The second requires you to work with a specific homeschool association that will hold your hand through it for a couple $100 a year. And the third option is to register with a homeschool association of your choice and report back to them on the level that they require about the work that you've done. I've been really happy with our association, PACE, PACESC. For elementary kids, they require that I complete a compliance form at the end of the year, indicating that we've done 180 days and that I've covered the basic subjects, math, science, history, reading. And though exemptions are available, PACE SC requires that you use their high school transcript service, which has actually been super helpful to us. There is a link below in the description where you can find out what the requirements are for your state. Okay, so thinking about what's required to be legal brings us to the first of the 5 homeschool keys that I'd like to share. Number 1, have a vision and do some preparation. How long do you plan to homeschool and why? If you live in South Carolina, this will help you determine which one of the 3 options you would want to choose. And this vision will act as a roadmap to help you choose resources, to create a routine. It will guide you. You want to prayerfully ponder your vision, discuss it with people that are close to you, write it down in a concise, clear way, and put it where you're going to read it at least once a day to maintain integrity between your intentions and your actions. Consider how you're planning to homeschool each of your children. How are you preparing for that? Try this exercise. Write each of their names on the top of a blank piece of paper. What is their love language? What motivates them? What is their learning style? Thinking about child development, what are appropriate behaviors and expectations for that child? Do you have healthy relationships with them? You can't teach a child who won't listen to you. Nicolene Peck is my go-to mentor for getting roles and relationships right. She has great material on teaching self-government, and there's a link below for some of her material. What phase of learning are your kids in? Oliver and Rachel DeMille of a Thomas Jefferson Education, also called TJ Ed, have some great material with fantastic suggestions on helping your kids through core phase, through love of learning phase, and through scholar phase. So there's a link below for that also. As you know, it's really easy to feel overwhelmed by all the homeschool hype. So just remember that it's much easier to get a drink from the faucet than it is from the fire hose. You're not going to ruin your kids if you haven't read every philosophy before you get started. You just need to keep the faucet turned on by reading or listening to materials that inspire you on a regular basis. Seek for personal revelation to know what the next right step is. And this may sound really corny, but looking into my kids' eyes every day helps me stay focused on them. And I don't mean just a quick glance, but like really looking into their eyes. When I look long enough, it's easier to feel the strengths of this child and the needs of this child. I know that they're going to do amazing things with their lives, and a big part of my job is helping them stay curious and interested and feel secure in their relationships so that they can accomplish their missions. Our children can't be interested in or curious about things that they've never been exposed to. So that brings me to my next key, number 2. So key number 2 is to use easily available resources, books. Don't feel like you need to go buy a bunch of boxed curriculum to get started. Consider letting books be your main resource, regardless of what age your children are. If you think about how people have educated themselves throughout history, it's been through great books and great mentors. It's interesting to read about the history of education. If you are reading, and discussing and doing projects with your kids, you really will be thrilled with the results. Whether your library only has curbside pickup right now or you can actually go in, consider what you can do to help your kids pick a variety of books. Books about great people, books about great artwork, about great literature, about great economists, great computer scientists, whatever it might be, you name it. Maybe make them a list, like you need to find one biography, one history, one poetry, one hobby book, whatever you think it is that would most help them right now. There are some actually really amazing non-textbook books for every subject that you can think of, including math and grammar, which is pretty surprising. I wish I had known about them when I was younger. There are links below for some of my favorite book lists. In your home, place those books on shelves or on counters facing outward so they get seen and they'll actually get picked up. You might encourage your kids to read certain books by creating like a list of 20 books and you want them to read 10 books from that list. Or maybe you put books in a tic-tac-toe grid, or maybe you create like a bingo sheet and they pick books from that. You'll be able to get creative once you start. You really want to discuss what they read and have your kids do projects. In the link below, there are some project ideas that we've had a lot of fun with. Even our high school kids like doing projects with books, though theirs might look a little bit different. Like your 16-year-old might make gunpowder to demonstrate how a particular weapon was used in history. To help your kids share what they're learning and practice speaking skills, we have our kids give a report with a visual on something that they're studying once a week at lunchtime. With our high school kids, we make a schedule of books that we're committed, my husband and I, to reading with them, a few each month. They help choose some titles related to their studies. For example, we have a daughter doing chemistry this year, so The Disappearing Spoon, a chemistry classic, will be on our list. And then once a week, we sit down at the kitchen table with them and we discuss what we've been reading. So the kids will bring what we've dubbed our B cubed to the kitchen table. B cubed means the two best quotes and the bottom line, in your opinion. And my husband and I will ask open-ended questions, and we have had some really insightful book discussions. Another important way to have shared experiences with great books is to have a family read aloud time daily. The times we've done that during our morning meeting, right now we're doing it at bedtime. These read alouds will be powerful ways to reinforce the values and have fun together. Talk about it as you go and do activities that are related to it, like eat something that the characters in the book ate, or make a map of something from the book, or dress up like one of the characters. The other day, my 9-year-old came up to me laughing that he had just jumped to the island of conclusions, a very hard place to swim back from. And we all had a good laugh as we remembered what had happened to Milo when he made a hasty conclusion in a book that we had read aloud together, The Phantom Tollbooth. So these stories come back up. One more anecdote to illustrate the point that non-textbooks can really deliver great lessons and are a great launching point for further studies. We recently read The Wizard of Oz, and I realized as we were reading it that it was a brilliant background to study the human body. So here we have the Scarecrow, and we're learning about brains, and the Tin Man, and we're studying how our hearts work. So suddenly we had a body unit without needing to have textbooks to go along with it. Then we can go to the internet and look things up, or I can pull a health book off the shelf and use it. For younger kids especially, this helps keep their curiosity alive by learning what's interesting in the moment. And you'll find that writing and spelling and math and history and science are hiding inside of all these great books from the library that you might not have thought of before. Are there certain things that kids should learn at certain ages? Yes and no. There are milestones that we want them to hit, but there are so many things that we can learn no matter what our age. So don't let someone else's list make you feel embarrassed or make you feel prideful about where your kids are at. It's just where they're at right now. Even if you're only homeschooling for a short time, I would just relax and trust that you're putting yourself into it. You're investing yourself, and so they're going to turn out okay. Don't overthink that. If you help them enjoy the learning process, things are going to be okay. Really, as the parent, you're the best authority to know what your unique child needs to learn and when they need to learn it, and your confidence in that will build over time. Having said that, when you find yourself suddenly homeschooling, it is definitely helpful to have a spine to help you have ideas about where you should even start. A spine is a book that forms the backbone of your studies. You're not obligated to cover everything in every detail, but it gives you some structure. Edie Hirsch, a great American educator, has a series of books available in most libraries called What Your Child Needs to Know. There's one for preschool through 6th grade, and after that, kids are basically mimicking high school courses until they're ready for the real thing. When you do buy curriculum, and I did put links for that below, when you do buy curriculum, just keep your vision in mind so you don't get an ulcer looking at all the options. It can be so overwhelming. Once you purchase something and you start using it, don't feel married to it. Keep in mind that it's just another resource. The environment that you create and maintain in your home matters so much more than the curriculum that you choose. I will put a few links to some favorites, curriculum favorites for different subjects that we've done. But we're always expanding, we're always changing. So I do recommend looking at Kathy Duffy's website for curriculum reviews. Her link is also below. She will let you know if a curriculum is family friendly, if you could do it with a group of kids of different ages, if it's something that a child can do independently, like math, for example, or if it's something that a lot of parent oversight is needed for. So that's really helpful to help you maintain that vision that you have about what the year is going to look like. I've also included some links for websites you can buy used materials on, and don't forget to check the library. You also have great resources for learning environments besides what you put together, and I included some websites in the links that offer online classes for free, so you can pick and choose what you want to do. It's not like K-12 where you have to do the whole program. My son got in a forensics class this way through using Virtual SC Online, and several others. So hopefully there are some subjects that you might be able to share with a co-op group. Book clubs work really well for this because they're content-based rather than skills-based like math would be. Another fun way to have some variety is through video chats with grandparents on topics that they have interest and background in. Friends and neighbors can also be helpful with things that you don't feel confident in doing yourself. So pray for revelation and branch out. So this brings us to the third key that I'd like to share. Key number 3 is keep things simple. Keep the schedule simple. I'll walk you through a typical day at our house, not because it's the right schedule for you, but it might help you have ideas. We start with breakfast, we have family work time, and then we do some outside play. And then we get more official with a morning meeting that includes the pledge, a scripture that we're memorizing, prayer, and 10 to 15 minutes of me sharing something that I'm really excited about that I've learned, or just some general knowledge that we can all do all together, the different ages. And this might be learning about a composer, reading a poem, reading a story about a mathematician, talking about a piece of art, trying to build some architecture based on some famous architecture. I don't make any elaborate plans for this. I grab a book and I share something. And then we split. My high school kids go do their independent studies, and I read and do activities with my younger kids using library books and some curriculum resources for content-based subjects like history and science. Sometimes we learn about topics the older kids are studying, so we can be on the same page. Like this year, we'll study some modern history and chemistry because we have older kids that will be working on that. I work with my younger kids individually on skills-based subjects like math or spelling. When it's not their turn with me, they might practice the piano or play a typing game or do a math game or some coding or read a book. Maybe you'll come up with a center rotation, or maybe you have a nap taker and you're going to use that time to do one-on-ones with kids. With my younger kids, I don't schedule out what we're studying very far ahead of time. I used to write out extended plans, but I've realized that that's a stressful idea that doesn't have a great harvest for our family. So I have a loose idea of where we'd like to be and when, and sticky notes and note cards are my best friends for day-to-day and week-to-week planning. I really want my kids to be interested in learning, which means presenting them with different topics and being willing to spend more time on things that they're really into. Planning too far ahead can prevent that for us. So I generally try to be done teaching the younger kids by lunchtime. If they're overscheduled, then they're overstimulated and learning is not happening anymore. We don't do every subject every day. We rotate. With my high school kids, it makes sense to have a plan for their studies for half a year or for the whole year, depending on the subject. Whatever you choose for a daily routine and the rhythm for your home, just know that you haven't failed if it's time to change things up. We all benefit from inspired changes, whether they're motivated by a new baby or the weather or a unique challenge with a particular family member. It's okay. In the afternoons, the kids know that I get a chunk of personal study time while the younger kids are having quiet time. And this isn't home management time for me, this is self-development time. We each have special interests, and having time reserved for our own pursuits reinforces to the kids that we have unique missions to work on too. We're not just moms. At a recent family reunion, folks were sharing stories of commendable things that their ancestors had done, like help build cities and regulate government. And then my mother-in-law shared some stories about her ancestors who hadn't done anything fantastic so that their names were emblazoned anywhere, but her conclusion was really poignant. She said, they weren't great people, they were pretty ordinary, but everything they did was great. And this really struck a chord with me because I thought that's all of us. We're pretty ordinary people, but what we do really is great. And I think that if we keep that in mind, that we've been blessed, individually us, with certain interests and talents that we need to take the time to develop. Then we need to invest time in ourselves on a regular basis so we can do the things that we were put here to do, just like we want our kids to do that. Afternoons are also when I check in with older kids on what they've been studying, and there's some subjects that we do together. Like this year, we're doing German lessons together. And sometimes the kids have lessons outside the home. We usually take a half day towards the end of the week when we meet with friends or we go on a field trip or something. This might sound like a lot of planning on mom's part, and it is, but here's the fourth key, which makes my job easier. Here's the fourth key, ownership. I highly recommend weekly one-on-one interviews, in which one of the things that you discuss is what they are interested in learning. We keep interview sheets and we have them write down their goals on a 3x5 card, and they hang it in their room so that we can walk by during the week and see it and talk about it and include it in their plans during the school week. The older kids should write down their study plans before they meet with you. We have our interviews on Sunday. So when Monday morning comes, they already have a study plan that we have okayed the day before. Two other ideas that help older kids especially take ownership of their studies are learning contracts and creating syllabuses. A learning contract shows what their home responsibilities are, what studies they need to complete, and what privileges go with that. There's a link below for a contract example from TJ Ed. Older kids can help create a syllabus to use as the starting point for their class. This helps them use good resources, but still tailor things to their own interests. If we're starting with a textbook, for example, like an Apologia biology book or a book on the Constitution, then we create a spreadsheet using the topics that are listed in the book, and then we add columns with notes about where they're going to do an essay or a project or have a field trip, and then we stick in due dates. My older kids want to study modern history this year, so for another example, we're working together to make a great books list, and that's going to be their spine for that class. And those will be the books that my husband and I read and discuss with them once a week. At intervals that you deem appropriate, another important way to help your older kids have increased ownership of what they're studying is to do oral and essay tests with them. Multiple choice doesn't really help them think. So you can hold the spine, in your lap, and you ask the questions and they answer. You don't have to be an expert to do this. Give them an essay assignment from that section with whatever criteria you deem appropriate. The more we write, the better we think. So you want older kids to do a lot of writing. You can give them grades based on how they did and what you think they're capable of. You might use a writing rubric if that's helpful. Have them redo work as needed. And that brings us to the last key that I'd like to share. Key number 5 is keeping track of it all. Most of my older kids' work is saved online in organized Google folders. I don't try to print everything out and have it ready to show somebody who comes knocking at my door. I'm not overly worried about that. It's there, it's online, most of it's online. And then remember that weekly study plan and contract that you've made with them. Those are also things that help show their year at a glance, what they're planning to work on. You might work with a homeschool association to create transcripts, or you can do it on your own with help from mentors. You'll learn, for example, that 60 hours of work in a particular subject is worth a half credit, and about 120 hours or so makes a full credit. It's okay to create your own class titles. Just look for help from trusted homeschool mentors. For younger kids, don't overthink it. I used to have a binder for each kid with tabs for each subject, and I would file things as we went along. But then history kind of blends with science, and sometimes writing goes with one of those topics, and spelling, we might use words from one subject that we're studying. So we got rid of the tabs and we just file it in a binder. And every couple of weeks, we pull out the things that are not favorites and keep the things that are favorites. So at the end of the year, we have a stack of favorite things. And that's what we hang on to. All knowledge is really interrelated. And I don't want to give my kids the false idea that, this is math and this is science and this is spelling and this is writing. And, these subjects intertwine. And so it's okay to treat it like that in the way that you're keeping track of it. It's easy for somebody looking at it to know that you're addressing the different subjects that you need to. I will put a link to a report card that we created for one of my kids in case that's helpful to you. To get in South Carolina is required 180 days. We've gone with the same schedule as the public school simply because our older kids are already doing an early morning religion class and it's on the public school schedule. So it just makes it easier to do it that way. But if you want to do something different, feel free to do that. Just find a way to keep track of your 180 days, however you do, that's going to work for you. In conclusion, I just want to share a few final thoughts. It is really a lot easier to keep the faucet turned on daily than to fire hose yourself with information about philosophies and curriculums, and it can be really overwhelming. So just keep the tap turned on and get a little bit every day or every week. Learn something a little bit more. Don't feel like you have to know everything at the get-go to be successful. There is a free convention coming up on one of my favorite homeschool websites, and there's a link to that. I will say that I just recently listened to Sarah Mackenzie's podcast on the Real Loud Revival and her top 10 mistakes in homeschooling, and she nailed it, and it was really validating to me to listen to it. So I just keep constant renewal, and that helps me make my actions match my intention that I have, that vision that I keep. There really will be maybe 1 in 10 days that go like you think they're going to go, but that's kind of life. That's the way things roll. So you just hang in there and trust the process. Your most important work really is within the walls of your own home. I hope the ideas in this video don't overwhelm you. I hope that they help you actually have a sense of calmness, maybe even feel empowered, and especially feel excited about homeschooling. You are going to rock this.